And I'm pleased to now hand over to Professor Virginia Lewis, who is going to moderate this panel session. Hello. Thank you. With several of our speakers from earlier today.
Thanks, everyone, and thanks to VCOSS again. I actually want to start with Beck because the audience haven't met Beck yet. So, Beck, I just wonder, you're kind of at the very pointy end, I would say, of the health energy nexus. And I wonder whether you could just, in a couple of minutes, explain why that is so. What I mean when I say that, you can tell people what it is.
Yeah, thanks, Jenny. So Beck Jolly, Director of Energy Equity at the Energy Charter. It is the pointy end because we are looking at better protections for life support customers in the home. We found from research funded by ECA, and this is pre-COVID figures as well, so these are modest figures, unfortunately, there's a lot of misconceptions and concerning behaviours for life support customers in the home. There's beliefs that they get 2-hour priority restoration if they're registered for life support. They don't have a backup plan. Only 77% of people have a backup plan. They do not have backup storage either. So there's this belief that if you register for life support, that there's this world of support that happens around you, which is absolutely not true. So the Energy Charter works with our signatories to develop a rule change on what better support for life support customers can look like. That's led by Essential Energy, who have had some concerning figures on their watch, which they've been very proactive to motivate and do something about. And also co-led by the South Australian Power Networks as well. On this particular initiative, though, well beyond our signatories, we have 77 different types of energy businesses involved in this one. So it is one of those initiatives that people are coming together across the supply chain, retailer to distributor. There's a lot of people concerned about what to do here. And I've heard so many people say, you know, they are actually losing sleep over this one. Mm-hmm. Last week, which is an amazing feat, we're working with Consumer Health Forum Australia, who are the national peak body for consumer health advocacy, and they actually pulled together a lived experience panel for us, which has been amazing. So we will be moving forward with the wealth of information from this lived experience panel, and there'll be a lot more happening on this space now, so it's great.
That's amazing. Thank you very much. That's, yeah, very interesting. And I'll just say to the panel too, that if you actually want to ask each other a question, you feel free to flag to me that you have a question for one of your colleagues, because I know it's not, we don't often have an opportunity to be in the room together. So it's very exciting. Carl, I just wanted to ask in relation to your program, which was focused on the high rise in particular. And I just wondered whether, you know, I can't necessarily ask if that program will continue, but in terms of the role of the public housing provider, what sort of role do you see for them to support those peer worker, bioculture, navigator, connector roles within their own housing system?
Well, the public housing program that I'm leading is funded by Department of Energy, not by the housing provider. Mm-hmm. So I think, you know, we've got a commitment to helping people with the affordability of their bills. So, yeah, we're unsure of the situation with budgets until the next few weeks, but we'll continue providing the support in the estates. So our team's there every quarter across 2 estates simultaneously, providing support, like I said, with concessions, cheap energy plans and debt relief. So what the future looks like beyond June, we don't know at this stage.
No, and I think as it came through, and certainly in the work that we did too, the issue of the short-term funding of programs, and which is very, very common, as we know, that it's very difficult, even when a program's been wildly successful, to go to government and say we want this now to be scaled up, so it's statewide, and we want it to be sustained for the future. So it's a challenge. Alanta, can I ask you then, in terms of some of the things that you talked about together, you talked about consumers being, frightened to phone up. They didn't have that confidence to phone up to change their bills and so on. And so they were helped with that. To what extent do you think that some of the confidence that people got will be sustained? So, do you think that the people who kind of walked through that process of how to actually make a choice and choose the different bill and so on, is that likely to be sustained, or do you think people need to keep having support?
It's a great question, and in an ideal world, all of these programs would be building personal capacity to be able to undertake that navigation of the system themselves. But I would say that Carl's staff, our staff, when they're actually calling the energy companies on behalf of clients, they're on the phone for hours at a time. Every single business has a different set of systems to navigate. Interpreters get cut off when they go from one sort of customer service officer to another. I think a few people have mentioned today that this is a public health issue, and I think we're still seeing that legacy of an understanding that energy is your individual responsibility. And we really need to shift that into a systems focus where there is actual responsibility for energy companies and retailers to make sure that they're making it very simple and easy to know that there are concession offers, that there are utility relief grants that they can access. Because Carl's team's experience and our team's experience is when public housing residents actually see professionals navigate that system, they're actually almost more turned off by just seeing how hard it was to go through that process. So I think these sorts of discussions really are pushing these issues away from the perception of energy usage being individual responsibility as to being a public health issue, and hopefully putting responsibility on the sector to make it that you don't need to know the magic words to actually access the concession plans, to know that you can link your concession card with your bill, know that there's debt relief there for you. So
yes, thank you. One of the through the web thingy, we had a comment. The chat function. The ASMA Australia has some strong guidance around minimum standards for housing. And Nikki, this might be for you and perhaps Toby too. Some strong recommendations around minimum standards for housing to minimise the health implications of living in conditions that are too hot or too cold, that obviously have a negative impact on asthma. Is there an opportunity to involve health experts in designing minimum standards checklist for the housing sector? Is there already that, or could there be more? What do you think there?
In Australia, we're only building the evidence that cold homes is a public health problem. So there's a whole team around Emma Baker and Rebecca Bentley at the Uni of Melbourne who are trying to build that evidence, how many people are being killed. So if we know that in the UK, for example, if someone has got a cold-related disease, there's a way of notification and 10,000 people die. So those sort of big, scary numbers we don't have yet. And I think it's one of the problems that these cold and heat-related problems are not necessarily identified. We've got a few sort of studies happening, but nothing at that scale. So I think a lot of health professionals are really not aware themselves that it should be so warm in your home, for example, what to do around cold. And when it comes to how good does the housing standard need to be, it's a little bit dynamic. So the more energy efficient, so the more insulation in Victoria we've got, and solar shading, so it's cool in summer, efficient heating and cooling systems, a fuel choice that's not too expensive and hopefully low carbon. All these factors really play into the affordability of energy, but then how you heat your home, for example, are you using wood, which may be cheap because you're on a property and you can get it, that may have other health problems. So I think there is a real opportunity for health, energy and housing to sit together to come up with good guidelines and standards. At the moment, this is not happening, but it's just one of the opportunities to work together and really look at the problem from various ways. Because if you change one lever, other things happen. You know, you insulate the home really well, you reduce heating demand, but then your cooling demand goes up and you may have overheating. Or you draft proof the home and then there's not enough air exchanges, ventilation is not done manually, you get mold. So it's quite complex, but I do think looking at it from various disciplines may really be the opportunity to come up with good and guidelines that sustain action and ensure that the outcomes are actually good, because all factors are being considered.
I think that's a great suggestion, and absolutely, I think that's an area where this work can contribute to arguing for the need for health experts to contribute to home energy efficiency standards and thermal efficiency standards. And my thoughts go to two places. One is, I mean, Australia has more asthma than anywhere else in the world, so it's a pressing issue. We know one of the Howden Chapman randomized trials from New Zealand focused on children and asthma because there was such a risk in their cold, mouldy homes. They actually had to redesign mold scales in that study because the highest level was at the size of a 10-cent piece, and they were seeing like half the wall overtaken with mold, so they designed their own mold scale. So we know that cold and mold are terrible for asthma. But the other growing issue is your cooktop. We also know that burning gas inside is not good for asthma. And so that really feeds into the electrification push that we need in households to get away from burning fossil fuels. And I think the health argument can really help drive some of that change as well.
Yeah, okay, that's really interesting. One of the questions from the audience too, which I'll throw to you to start, Toby, but invite others to comment on, was what's happening for renters. So the question was, or the comment was, that 31% of households who are renting, and they arguably have little agency or influence on the energy efficiency of their homes, and the homes are often poorer quality, particularly if you start doing that sort of bundling of what we in shorthand call risk factors, low income, low chance of home ownership, poorer quality housing because it's cheaper housing. So you're compounding all those risk factors. What's happening for renters in particular? Do you know?
So healthy homes included all types of home ownership or non-ownership. So we had renters in our sample. It was a little bit more problematic to get the approvals for the upgrades because we needed to go through landlords, but it did happen. I think, again, we can learn from the New Zealand example. So I talked about the research, those trials prompting government policy, government program change in funding retrofits. It also prompted government policy change around minimum standards for housing. And one of the great ironies of healthy homes, I think, is that Matt Soberg, who I mentioned, he was from New Zealand originally and owned an investment property in New Zealand, and he got the form saying you need to upgrade your house because it doesn't meet minimum standards. And so it came full circle for him. And I think that's essential. I mean, we know about the split incentive model where the landlord owns the bricks and mortar and the tenant has to pay the excessive bills because the home's not thermally efficient. To get around that, I think the best way is to have really solid minimum standards for our homes. I think that's the best way to go about it. But that's not to say that renters can't do anything. We also talk to renters about identifying one room that you can heat, blocking simple draft ceiling stuff, which, pretty much landlords are totally fine with. If you get a caulking gun and go around your skirting boards, if you, put cardboard or hang blankets in empty doorways, blinds, etc. There's a lot that you can do, even as a renter, to keep your home warm without breaking the bank.
So that, in a sense, gets a little bit to how people learn about these things. Like, where is the average renter or just the home owner? Where's the average person learning about what they can do to reduce their energy demand and increase also then their energy efficiency of their house?
Yeah, it's conscious that other people might want to jump in, but Sustainability Victoria is very conscious of being a source of information. I coordinated a working group last year when we knew that electricity prices and gas prices were going to go up. We knew that around January, February. Coming ahead of the winter season, we updated all our website resources to talk about winter warmth, what you can do as an owner, as a renter, and one of the common misunderstandings is that it's the appliances in your house that are using all your energy. Actually, it's almost 50% of your entire energy bill in Victoria is for heating, by far the biggest. So anything you can do to increase the efficiency of your heating is the best thing to do. So that's like 43% of the average cost. And then the next biggest is water heating, which is only like 17%. And so if you're worried about lighting, your fridge, etc., concentrate on the main game, which is energy efficient heating.
Okay. What about others when you think about this question of where people can find out what they need to find out? Is this something, Nikki, that you've thought a bit about, isn't it? Because in fact you lecture in the topic of energy efficiency and increasing energy literacy, if we like to call it that.
There's very little information out there, to be honest. So we have the star rating, for example, that Toby talked about. If you talk to people, even those who are building new homes, they're often not aware of the star rating system. We don't have mandatory disclosure in Australia on homes so we don't have that language around how energy efficient or non-efficient homes really are. So it doesn't trigger down. A lot of the information is on websites, but if you are not digitally literal and you don't really know where to go, you may not find it. In this one project we had with the in-home care providers, they suggested to have little videos, for example, in doctors' rooms. You know, they have the television running and sometimes it's a health channel. So just have it running there while people waiting, they can read this. This little seniors guide was a printed version that I picked up at SV a few years ago. Great, because it's something you have in your hand, and a lot of people want something physical rather being online. So we've never had a public education campaign really to show to help people understand where the impacts are on their bills and what to do about it. So I think there's lots of scope. You really have to go and find, and we don't have that one profession. We've got nutritionists and we've got physiotherapists, but the energy counselors we've got are usually ones who do the star rating assessors, but they're not that sort of public facing, you know, you call someone up and get that help. Very few people, and hopefully with mandatory disclosure at least, we'll have more people doing that when that comes in. So like the scorecard assessment we've got in Victoria.
And what about the program in the high rise? How did you kind of approach that, and how much did you try and sort of communicate to people, and how?
The issue for residents in the high rises is less one of energy consumption, more one to do with the affordability of the supply.
Yep.
So they have bulk hot water, bulk heating that's included as part of their rent. It comes at minimal cost. So the people we're seeing are way below average energy consumption. It's just they can't afford that bill. So it's more about making sure that they're accessing the entitlements that are existing that they either don't know about or they think they're getting when they're not, because they're not engaging either with their retailer or with their bill, helping them access debt relief, making sure that they're on the cheapest offers with their existing energy company. It might seem like an obvious thing, moving someone onto the cheapest energy plan. A lot of our job is really selling the benefit of that. The residents we see are absolutely petrified that something's going to go wrong in the process. They're going to get double billed. They're going to get disconnected. Something will go wrong. So we have to reassure them that all we're doing is moving them onto the cheapest plan with their current provider. The colour of the bill stays the same. The account number stays the same. All we're doing is changing those rates to the cheapest ones that are available. And like Alanta was saying before, as much as we'd like people to stand on their own 2 feet after they've seen us do it, the reality is that there's a significant cohort in the estates that are going to need that ongoing support around the affordability of their bill.
I'll just add to that the importance of word of mouth and engaging with community groups and community leaders, particularly for culturally and linguistically diverse communities. You can have fantastic online resources, but if no one knows they're there, the whole swathes of community are not going to be accessing them. So using a place-based approach, which, you know, we have the one thing that the high rises do offer is a density where we can actually be on site, be in the foyers. People see the service. They have that opportunity to talk directly to someone, particularly directly to someone who's part of their community, can speak their language, knows what their experiences are. just have to make sure those communities are not left behind in these processes. Anecdotally, the power saving bonus, when that came out, a lot of people were very worried that that was a scam of some sort, that, you know, their data was going to be taken away. And you only overcome that by, you know, the first few people sort of trialing it, finding that it's actually a real scheme, and the word of mouth going from there. So I think to implement any of these strategies, you need a multifaceted approach, and outreach and engagement with community leaders and community groups has to be part of that as well.
And Beck, that's sort of what you're talking about, isn't it? With your lived experience group, you're actually getting to the people who are affected by this directly and working with them. Do you find that you're kind of, when you're working with that group, there's a lot of communication about energy and energy efficiency? Like we're sort of seeing, you know, it is that thing of there's the supply, there's the use, there's the cost, all those things together. Or is your group more focused on just it is the continuity of access is the big issue, rather than the issues necessarily about the whole of their home being energy efficient?
I think we'll be seeing what the focus is, because they'll be self-determining the conversation. So what the priorities are, I think, are yet to be seen, and they only were established last week. I will say on the national sort of messaging component, though, the Energy Charter did run a national concessions awareness campaign late last year that VCOSS was actually part of, co-developed with 21 different community service organisations. So a deep dive into awareness, reach, literacy needs in different languages. We ended up with 246 different assets alone to be able to do that. And I think the lesson that we learned from that was energy is not on people's minds. It's just not top of people's minds. There's so much happening in the cost of living crisis at the moment that energy and utilities is something that they see as what they have to manage, but on top of food and petrol and rent and mortgage, it is you're competing up, you're butting up against messages. So I think that's why this conversation is so important, because people care about their health.
Yeah,
They'll put health first. They won't put their energy bill first, and they won't read their energy bill. We noticed that as well. We had financial counsellors nationally who we worked with on that campaign saying the same thing. They're not walking in saying, I can't pay my bill. They're walking in saying, I'm cold or I'm hungry. And I think that's something that we need to tap into when we look at, you know, the impact of energy is not to focus on energy in a way, is to focus on what they don't need to hear about the bill. It's what's happening in their lifestyle.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think too that sort of getting back to Atlanta's point too about the trustworthiness and the connection and the local place-based, you know, it is, as you've all been saying, a combination of local as well as the top-down, having availability of options to support you to access the concessions and the improvements to home and so on, but also then being able to trust that it's safe to do that. One of the people on the forum online too commented that regionally, we depend on neighbourhood houses, community health and other trusted agencies to assist community members with energy literacy and accessing concessions and services they're eligible for. Is there advocacy to adequately support these trusted connector agencies in this role? And of course, that's what the whole of VCOSS project is about, in a sense, is what does it require to actually support those people who are in trusted roles in community and who do understand that there is a link between health and energy. You know, what is needed to make that a more effective connection and make it have more power, I suppose, to be positively affecting the issue. So I wonder whether each of you might like to sort of speak to what you sort of think, what's the one big thing you think that could be done soon that would actually would build that capacity and strengthen the capacity of the health sector to actually support people to overcome their energy hardship. It's a big question, so we're in the last 5 minutes, so in a sense it's your roundup question, and it's what would you like to see happen? You know, what's your ideal thing? So if anyone's ready to put their hand up and go first, what would they like?
Maybe I'll go first.
Yeah, go for
I
it.
feel like there's other people here better qualified than me to finish on a fitting tone. But what we noticed in Healthy Homes, and it's been touched on a little bit, is that sometimes there's a resistance to government support, particularly on the energy front. I think there's this suspicion that things are a scam, or someone's knocking on my door and offering me a light globe, which I think the Victorian government's done some great things, but it's difficult to get past that that mindset. And I think we can possibly do a better job by going through local government. And this is what Healthy Homes found, was that there was a little bit of suspicion of things coming from state government, but when the recruitment letters came through their local health network, which was through their local council, people were on board with it, and then word of mouth took over. So I got an upgrade, and then my neighbour was looking at my house going, I'd quite like this upgrade as well. And there is a way to get a bit closer to households and start off that word of mouth process. And I think it is through the local government health and energy sustainability officers. I think that would be a really good setting for it.
Great, excellent. We identified those in the system mapping too as being a potential inroad to.
Yeah.
Beck.
I think it's about co-development and co-ways of working. We saw in the life support program, we knew what the energy companies wanted, we knew what customers wanted, but then when we spoke to the medical advisory group, they were saying there's a duty of care issue if they have to tick a box and say someone's going home and they could be at risk of losing energy. So we need to look 360 at what these solutions are, and it's not always going to be in the chair that we're sitting in. So I think that collaboration point is critical.
Lovely. Nikki.
I think there's so many ways of identifying people who are in need, but getting them to help really needs that central point of referral. Because those people who identify them don't have a lot of time, but go there, you will get help. So there needs to be funding, and there need to be people who understand and can speak to vulnerable householders. They know their situation. So as you've got that point of referral now sitting in the foyer of the high-rise buildings, we really need this nationwide in various places, but also knowing that there will be help if you contact them, and sustained help.
Yes, sustained help. Yeah.
It's a huge question. I've been heavily mulling, listening to the other answers. I think ensuring that we don't have siloed approaches from government departments. It's taken, basically a collaboration of Department of Health, DECA and DFFH funding for this sort of work to be done. Sometimes the Department of Health funding is quite strict to things like healthy eating and active living, which in a cost of living crisis doesn't make a huge amount of sense. So we absolutely echo everything that's been said today around energy affordability being a public health issue and recognising that. So I think someone suggested building energy affordability into public health and wellbeing plans. Love it. So I think at that level, we need to see less siloed approaches, acknowledge the cost of living crisis on all of these health aspects, and a place-based approach. So on the ground, services know each other. They're going to the networks and the forums. They need to be able to refer someone in need to all of the services around them. So we see that work happening a lot.
Lovely.
Yeah, I think community service providers are trusted. They're already known as providing supports in the community. So it's how we can enable them to also provide good quality energy affordability support to people. I can talk to what the department's done with the power saving bonus. We provided outreach. We funded community agencies to provide outreach to people who couldn't apply for that using the online channel. Neighbourhood Houses Victoria, one of the outreach partners there. And with the energy assistance program, so the public housing side of things is just one of 3 delivery streams. So we're also partnered with Anglicare Victoria that provides over the phone support, but also community information support. So their network of community information outlets where people can go and get that in-depth support, which I think is the thing that we agree needs.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone. It's great to have been able to have a bit of a chat, and I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you, Virginia. I'm tempted to ask you for your final word. You're the only one who didn't get one. Would you like to answer your own question, or is that too?
Oh no, I think where we're heading is great. I think that this project that VCOSS initiated and ACS funded is just really excellent, and it seems like we're at a point in time and a moment in time where so much has happened that maybe it is all just there and it is ready to flowed into fabulous action, engage everybody. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone on the panel, Carl from DECA, Atlanta from Go Health, Nicola from RMIT, Beck from the Energy Charter, Toby from Sustainability, and of course, Virginia from La Trobe. And that brings us to the end of today's forum, but I stress it is not the end of this important work. We're about to see an explosion, are we, of good ideas and interesting advocacy, powerful, impactful work. So we're just getting started. And as I mentioned at the outset today, we have released a publication that is a set of provocations around this critical issue of the energy health hardship nexus. At VCOSS, we do intend to keep provoking and keep persuading until we see genuine, long-lasting system change, and a lot of work lies ahead in us doing that together with you all and with you all and the Victorian community more broadly. So we need to tell health system stewards and professional bodies that their workforces have a responsibility to address energy hardship. That's another big conversation and one we've started on today. We need to tell treasurers and health ministers that they need to fund health workers and health interventions that health workers that can routinely screen for energy hardship and connect people with energy assistance programs. And we've heard today of an example of the impact that that's having in the high-rise towers for some of our most vulnerable cohorts who haven't even been aware that they were eligible for assistance. That's a tough time. That's tough when budgets are stretched, as we all know, but we will absolutely have those courageous conversations about the need to invest in those initiatives. We also need to be telling the Australian government and other governments across our nation that they are lagging behind other parts of the world in terms of recognising and intervening at scale in joined up, sustainably focused and sustainably funded energy health responses. So that's another challenging conversation. And we've started to have this interesting and provocative conversation about a right to affordable and clean energy. And that is a call for quite radical transformative change in terms of both how we think about energy as a right, as something that we all need in our lives, but also situating that in terms of how we as a global community need to source that energy from sustainable and green, clean sources. So situating that in a kind of climate equity space as well. So we hope you will join us on this journey as you already are here in the room today. And later this week, the VCOSS team will send you details of the next step in this project and details for how you can get involved. And I also encourage you to have a look at what we've got already on the VCOSS website at vcoss.org.au/energy health. And before I conclude formally, I would just again like to thank all of our presenters, our collaborators, and our major project funder, Energy Consumers Australia. Thank you so much for your support. We couldn't be doing this without you. And also, again, a big shout out to the VCOSS team, Emma, Miriam, Deb, and also our comms staff, Ryan, Deborah, and Adam, for putting on today's event. Thank you so much for your hard work. Have a great day.